Now we're going to learn how to control the stage and how to deliver your presentation. So what we're going to start with is talking about the fatal first 5. So the first 5 minutes is the worst for everybody. The group is trying to figure you out. They're still trying to judge you. And we say don't judge, but everybody judges everybody. We all know that. So they're trying to judge you. They're trying to figure you out. Who are you? What you're about? Is this something I care about? If it's something they came to, if it's your seminar, chances are they care about parts of it. But the first 5 minutes is tough, and so people that aren't really good or they're nervous about presentations, this is usually the make or break. This is usually what freaks people out that first 5 because they're trying to get in the role and get in the groove. And so when you're starting, introductions are a key part. And for those of you that are in Toastmasters, you know that if somebody's bringing you on the stage, they usually do your introduction. So what you want to have in your introduction is you want to make sure that your introduction supports what you're going to talk about. So many times people put all kinds of nonsense in their introduction. So I'm bringing somebody up on stage and I'm like, oh, and they wrote books about LinkedIn, but today they're going to talk to you about insurance. Okay, that's fantastic. Or, oh, this person did this thing, but they're going to talk to you about something completely different. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. It doesn't support your point. Your introduction, even if somebody else delivers it, is supposed to support you. And it's supposed to support what you're going to talk about in your topic. So if you've written books on the topic, probably mention that. If you have experience in it, probably mention that. And then you want to also shift control. So if you're coming on the stage and somebody's bringing you on, one of the things they teach in Toastmasters in particular, and just in general people do, is you do a handshake. And that symbolizes you're taking control of the presentation and of the meeting and of the stage. You can also thank the person that introduced you. If they're way across the stage, it's like 50 feet to walk. You're just like, nah, thanks, man. You know, just stay on the other side. That's okay too. So you also want to, so most people make this mistake is when they get up to the front of the stage. Let's see if I can. Oh, sorry. So when they come up to the front of the stage, they just start blasting. They get introduced. Oh, hey, William Wallace. And I get up here. I'm like, hey, everybody, all right. Hey, I'm William Wallace and that. Don't do that. Don't do that. What you want to do is you want to take a moment. You want to scan the room. Don't talk. People always have to fill the silence. Just let it silent. It's kind of weird. You guys go, that's awkward. But you just want to scan the room. You don't want to do it weird with 10 minutes and just scan the room. But you want to scan the room, get to know who's in there, see who's already paying attention. If people are talking naturally, they'll quiet down because everybody's like, oh, he's probably waiting for me to be quiet. Stop being so conceited. I'm not waiting for you to be quiet. But I'm trying to get the room, the feel of the room. You also, you want to engage your audience early. So if you notice when I started, I asked a bunch of questions. That's getting you involved in what I want to do. So, hey, everybody, have you ever this? Or are you blah, blah, blah? Have you done this? Have you done that? Now you're, okay, you're thinking, and you're, okay, I'm involved, and it becomes a two-way street instead of just me lecturing you about how awesome I am, which is what a lot of people do, right? And those are called enrolling questions. So anytime you get the opportunity to ask a question of the audience, you're enrolling them in what you're talking about. You're keeping them involved. So you can do it at any time. It doesn't have to be just at the beginning. Throughout your presentation, every couple of minutes, if you're getting on a long diatribe a little bit and you're kind of talking about it, get in there, ask a question. Hey, have you guys ever done this? Have you had this experience? Then people will, oh, okay, and they're back, they're waking up again. Sometimes if it's not interesting to them, they might fall asleep, but if you ask a question and you do it in the right way, they might, oh yeah, I haven't never thought of it that way. And then now they're really involved in your presentation. So it gives you an opportunity to keep the interest going. And then you want to also set ground rules. This is more applicable for longer spans if you're going to do a whole day or 3 days. You want to set the ground rules for everybody so we all start on the same plane. And it also allows you to catch people who are full of crap, right? Because you say, hey, are you guys going to participate today? And then you say, yeah, and then you don't participate. Then I can say, hey, remember that time when you said you were going to participate and now you're not participating? And usually if people have made that promise and then they get called out on it, now they're kind of embarrassed and then they're like, okay, yeah, I'll participate. But it's another thing that when people set the rules in their own mind, it's a lot better than if you just set the rules for them. How many of you agree? Show of hands. Show of hands, stop being lazy. All right. All right. So there, and I just enrolled you guys again. Now this is a big one. So people that are afraid, oh man, what happens if I forget what I'm talking about? It happens to a lot of people, even professionals. At my Toastmasters group, there's a guy who's been to the final stage of Toastmasters multiple times. He's an incredibly talented speaker. And usually I'll talk to him and I'll say, oh man, that was really cool how you used that pause and you really brought me in. And you did that, and pause is one of the big ones. And you pause at that time, and then he says, I just forgot what I was talking about. I don't know, I just forgot, and I had to get it back in my head. So if you forget what you're talking about, or you're leaving a gap, and you're trying to think of the next thing, just pause. It gives the audience a chance to soak in what you're saying, for them to nod, yeah. And then gives you a chance to focus and organize your thoughts so you don't maybe step on yourself or forget the next thing you were going to talk about, which happens pretty often. And then you can also just ask. You can just ask people. It's so, oh man, I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? What was the last thing that I mentioned? And then people, it humanizes you. A lot of times speakers want to be superhuman, but you make mistakes. You're not invincible. We're not all invincible. So you make them say, oh, hey, where did I leave off? What was the last thing I said? Oh, okay, cool. And then brings people in and it makes you seem like a person. So the next thing I want to cover is how you say it. So we're talking about maybe moving around on the stage a little bit. How do you say what you say? How to make it matter? So the first thing is a lot of people, if they're late or if they stumble over a word, they'll apologize for it. But what good does that do anybody? Nobody cares. Sometimes when you mess up, nobody even knows. Nobody even notices. But you notice because you know what your stuff's supposed to sound like. But I miss stuff all the time, and then I think afterwards, ah, dang, I missed it. But I won't apologize for that. It doesn't help anybody. If you're late, the audience is maybe irritated, so your apology really... have you ever been irritated at somebody, and then they just apologize to you, and you're just like, yeah, sure, whatever. Like, you just don't care. But you can tell it was really not... It wasn't sincere, and it kind of comes off that way. So, don't apologize. Don't even bother. It's not important. Just get up there, do your thing like you were supposed to do, and most of the time, if it was good, people will forget. Then you want to be confident. Have you ever heard the saying that whatever you say, if you just say it like you believe it, then people just take that as true? Even if you're wrong, stay wrong, as the military they used to tell us. If you're wrong, just stay wrong. Because once you start making those movements, it becomes noticeable. So just be confident in what you're doing and what you're saying. And just say it. And even if you're thinking in your head, I don't know if that's right, just go with it. Who cares? Be confident. And a lot of times people, if it's not significant, I mean, if you're lying on stage, that's not really a good habit to have. So I wouldn't do that. And then you want to be conversational, and that's part of the engaging the audience. You want to make it seem as if we're all involved. Is everybody learning something so far? You guys show of hands. Everybody learning a little something right now? Just trying to enroll you back in. But be conversational. Talk to people. Tell stories. Do those kind of things. I think I'll cover that later. But be conversational, because then it's more human. Dale Carnegie states that some of the most world-changing things that have ever occurred are through conversation. People having conversations is very powerful stuff. And then be passionate about what you're talking about. Love what you're doing. So many times we rehearse and we prepare so much that we just, all right guys, make sure you're conversational, be passionate, okay? This passion is so important. I'm reading off of my note cards. It just sucks the life right out of what you're talking about. So never do that. Always have an enthusiasm about what you're talking, if you like what you're talking about. I mean, if you're giving a work presentation and you hate your work, then probably you should get a new line of work. But if you like what you do, it should shine through naturally and let your personality shine. You also want to marvel. If you sell a product or a service, Steve Jobs was amazing at this. How many of you guys know what I'm talking about, Marvel? Not the comic book. Okay, some people are like, ah, man, I thought you were talking about like Thor. No, you want to marvel at what you're talking about. Guys, when he talked about the iPhone, it still gives me goosebumps. I watch it every now and then because I like to learn from him. He's one of the masters of presenting. He scrolled on the iPhone. It was the first time anybody had ever seen anything like it. He said, isn't this amazing? And everybody just agreed with him. Yeah, that is it. He was saying what everybody was thinking. when he pulled out the iPod and he started shuffling through it. Look at this. This is incredible. Isn't this amazing? And everybody, yeah, that is insane. If you're offering something to somebody, a service that you provide, isn't this amazing that I can provide you this service at this rate? Isn't that amazing? And then you want to marvel, obviously, but build up to all your big moments. If you have something big coming up, if you have a big reveal, you want to build up to it. Using Steve Jobs as an example, he did that too. He said, boom, he was going around, hey, we have something that's basically a music device, an iPod, a phone, and the internet browser. We have, like, he was doing it like it was 3 products, and he kept doing that. And he's like, do you guys get it? And it was 1 product. And he showed that. But he built up to that, and people were like, what the hell is he talking about? He keeps doing this thing. But he was building up to that moment, and then when he revealed it, it was like, everybody's like, oh my God. It was like, have you ever watched a movie, and then they get to that part, and you just feel it, and the music gets different, and you just feel like the story is getting tighter, and they're about to get to that big reveal? That's what you want in your presentation. So now, we handled a couple of those things. We're going to talk about working the stage, which is very, very important. Right? So first thing you want to do is, most people, there's a podium right there, is they have this podium and they stand at the podium and then they speak to you, and it's like a lecture. Lecturers do this all the time because they're lecturers, that's what they do. And then they point and they do that. And so you can do everything else, but you have that podium in there that really stifles you. And it creates a barrier between you and the audience. You want to be open, because what is the most common form of communication, right? Is it talking? Is talking the most common?
Body language.
It's body language, absolutely. Your body language. So if you're standing behind a podium, nobody can see what you're doing. You could be like tapping your toes. Nobody knows what's going on there. So if you're open, and the stage is open, and you're open to your audience, you can do a lot more. And I can gesture to you, and you get more of me, and it's a lot more of that conversation. Have you ever had a conversation with somebody behind the podium? You just stood behind the podium and they stood on the other side of you, you converse with them? No, I don't think so. You also want to move with purpose. Every time you move, I just want to be blinded. Every time you move, there has to be a reason. So many times people just pace and they're like, all right, guys, and this and that is distracting. It's annoying. And it's really just, it takes away from your point. Because the more distractions you create, the more people start thinking about that versus listening to your message. So when I move and I want to talk to you guys, I want to come here and have a purpose and a meaning behind every movement I take. So make sure you move with purpose and meaning. Most importantly, you want to tell a story. And ironically, I didn't do that here. This is very instructional though. But if you tell a story, we remember things in stories more than anything else. You remember a movie that you saw and what happened, because we've always done that. Before written records, we always told stories to pass along information, vital information. So if you can frame what you're going to say in a story, or you bracket with stories, which I like to do is I'll start with a story that's connected to my thing, and at the end I connect back to that story. It's very powerful when you do that, and then people are like, oh my God, because you leave it open too, and people don't like the open end, they like closure. So the more you can irritate people by leaving things open, the more impact you're going to have, because now they're waiting for that. They're like, when's he going to get to the end of the story? And then become your story. I had the privilege of attending a Toastmasters competition a few weeks ago, and these guys not only told amazing stories, but they got really into it. When they said they got down on the ground, they got down on the ground, and they talked about the power of that. Or this guy was talking about being a paratrooper and jumping out of a plane. He strapped on his backpack, he squatted down, and then he took that step towards the door, and then he jumped. That's powerful. It brings you in, because now you're there. Not only is he creating the visuals with his words, but now with his imagery, you can picture that occurring. So not only tell the story, but be your story. Stand by your slides, like I'm doing right now. Because if I'm way over here, now you're looking there, but then you're coming back here, and you're looking there, and your eyes are kind of darting. That's why I keep my slides simple, because once you've read it, there's nothing else on there anyway. So now you focus on me, and ideally you really want to have your slideshow off to the sides. You really don't want it in the middle, but most rooms are designed with it in the middle, because the slide is always the focus. But when you're speaking, you are the focus. And if your slideshow is the focus, then perhaps you should have just emailed it to everybody and saved this all the time, and the drive. So you want to make sure, if you're going to have a few things on your slides, stand by it so people don't have to move their eyes so much. It's distracting. So, and demand the audience's attention. So I'm talking about your PowerPoint. You don't want your presentation, whatever you have, if it's a PowerPoint or whiteboard, or if you have props, you don't want that to be the centered focus necessarily. You want to demand the attention. You want people to pay attention to what you have to say, not reading your slides, which is why I get annoyed when you see the slide, like the first slide, the really bad one I showed, where it's really long, because you're up here talking and people are reading that. And so you have to demand the attention. People pay attention to you and what you have to say. Okay, so this is a good one. I just wanted to throw this one in there because this was a good one. I learned this at a seminar and I thought it was really poignant, so I wanted to share with you guys. Is when you're doing Q&A, a lot of times we get lost in the Q&A and then we start ignoring the rest of the audience. So say Yoichi here has a question. I'll just be like, oh, hey, Yoichi, and I'm talking to him, but now the rest of you guys are completely alienated. You're like, okay, well, that question doesn't apply. And then so you tune out. So what you want to do is, first off, if Yoichi has a question, I want to come to the other side of the stage. And before I address him, I want to include all of you. And then I want to say, what's your question? And then when you ask the question, I make sure everybody heard it. Hey, did you guys hear what he had to say? If not, this is what he had to say, and here's my answer. And I'm involving all of you. If Michelle were to ask a question, I would do the same thing. I would come over here, and I'd say, what's your question? And I would include all of you guys, and say, what is it you have to say? So that really helps. Also, do not end on a Q&A. Some people like end their whole thing. You can end on that, but don't end with that as your slide. People have like, questions. Anybody have questions with a big question mark? That is annoying, because that's the last thing. People remember the first 30 seconds and the last 30 seconds of what you say. It's the recency effect. So they'll remember some of the last things you say. So if you end with questions, that's what people remember. So you want to put something up there that's valuable, that's vital, that's important to you, that they, at least if this is the one point that they can take home, and just put it up there. So that way, when you're answering questions, they're seeing that, and it's just burrowing into their head. So let's go. Boom. Then you want to make sure you thank the audience. You thank them for their time at the beginning. You say, hey, thank you guys. I'm going to do the best. We're going to do the best we can to make sure you have the most use of your time. Thank you for being here. You want to appreciate them. Before you start, before you get rolling, you want to thank the audience. At the end, you want to make sure you thank the audience. Hey, thank you guys for being here. Because really, at the end of the day, it's about the audience and really not about what you have to say, but how they receive it and if it's valuable to them. And before I close up, I have one more thing. One more thing. I always do this. This is a Steve Jobs technique that I love, is that as you're about to wrap up, but I have one more thing, because now people perk up. Oh, okay, well, I got so much. What's one more thing? After you've prepared so hard, sometimes we get so critical with each other, and with ourselves in particular, and I can be like this. After you've prepared so hard for that moment, and you get up there, you get in front of all those people, and you deliver that presentation, the presentation of your life, and people are like clapping and having a good time, expect it. Don't be critical on yourself and enjoy the moment. Don't say, oh, well, I messed up this and it could have been better. Just enjoy it. Hey, thank you guys. I appreciate that. And people come up to you and they say, that was great. Don't try to undercut yourself and say, oh, well, it could have been better. It could have been this. I could have done that. Just say, absolutely, it was phenomenal. Thank you. I agree with you. Just take the compliment and enjoy the moment. So thank you all for being here. And I hope that you had an incredible learning experience.